All right. So getting started here. My idea for this is to just kind of have a roundtable discussion on kind of the backboard of the decoys. So primaries, rumps, and tails. Maybe we'll spend I was thinking maybe an hour. So 20 minutes on the primaries, 20 minutes on rumps, 20 minutes on tails. One of the reasons that I wanted to kind of start this or kind of do this is that kind of in the text and different pieces that I've been reading, like the back kind of gets forgotten. And everybody talks a lot about heads and shapes, and I feel like kind of the primaries and the tails and rumps get glossed over, people just kind of moved on from them. It's almost like they assume that I know what I'm doing, but I don't. So an opportunity to learn. Also kind of this group discussion, like just kind of hoping to kind of collect some knowledge from the group and hear different opinions and different knowledge and learn in a different way. So kind of what I asked from you guys is to just kind of join the discussion, talk, kind of share knowledge, share experiences, and share your learnings. I have a couple examples to talk through. I know Rich has some here to kind of talk through and some ideas. I don't really have any specific, other than primaries, rumps, and tails, not really any other kind of specific piece. We can talk about carving, we can talk about patterning, drawing, painting, all of that. Just the way that you get details and the way that you kind of make birds come to life. Also, I think that we could talk, one of the ideas that we could talk about was kind of the difference between and the detail or the need for gunning decoys or competition decoys, what they're looking for in competition, or what they would be looking for in decorative decoys. I'm not too into the world of decorative decoys, but maybe some people are. So, to start with primaries, so I can start with an example of mine, kind of a bad example, and one of the things that kind of got me started with this would be kind of this redhead. So this was the second or the third decoy that I ever carved, and I wanted to get some primary detail in there. So this has some primary detail, but it didn't really come through the way that I wanted it to. The primaries don't really here have any differentiation between the rump, the upper rump or the lower rump, and then the tail is just kind of there. So kind of a bad example of a piece that I kind of tried and learned from and didn't really execute very well. So.
Well, one thing on primaries, we have the tip of the wing tip, and then that goes all the way down in that side pocket, and we have in front of the bird. So when you're laying them out in there, if you're going to have them cross, or if you're going to have them just, by each other, you got to kind of figure that out.
Okay.
Yeah, well, on Jesper, see, the primary really ends up in here, but that looks pretty good. And with all this detail fitting in there, you gotta put it there where you want it. So.
Okay.
One thing you want to do is maybe when you're playing around with them, if you've got, when you harvest your ducks, they can cut their wings off. Because then you've got, the shoulder and the forearm, the primaries and secondaries. You can see how they fold up and lay up up on the bird and be able to take it. You can put that on your bird and be able to take and see how it fits. Play around with the bird when you got it in hand, so that you can take it and set it up and tuck the wings into the side pocket. You can take and just visualize that, or use your phone and take pictures with it in certain ways so that you can take it. You see some of the competition birds they've got different feather or how they've got the wing coming out of the side pocket.
Yeah.
They can, just kind of play around with that wing that you've got and see how that works. And also taking the bird that you harvested and be able to just take and play around with it, set it up and, bend the neck and the throat and see how that sets up and take and, look over the top of the bird and that kind of watch that and see how that goes together, and that doesn't last for, on your mallard there, that's quite a bit different than what you got on the red.
Yeah.
And then when you got a diver, it's gonna, you've got shorter wings, so it's gonna lay up different.
So when you're carving, are you carving with a wing next to you? Like
not,
do you?
Not now.
Okay.
I mean, I did a few times.
Okay.
And, it's been 20 years. I had Tom Mattis actually out at my house. I had him out in 99 and 2000. I set up my garage as a classroom. He flew in from Boise and Friday night we did the heads. Saturday we did the body. Then tried getting it to a point where by Saturday afternoon we actually had the heads attached and we put on the first coat of varnish so that we could paint the next day.
Okay.
But and then he came out in 2001 and we were down south and one of the other guys that had been in the class the previous 2 years said that he was going to have done, but going through that, it was really fun because he really said, make sure, you handle the bird when you harvest it because that's going to show you up close. You get pictures and it really does quite a bit.
That's helpful.
It is, very.
Put that rating.
What's that?
Put that rating.
Yeah. That long explanation,
I started doing this, I did something. Who do you have off right away?
Tom Mattis. He's written 2 books and he's got the Decoy carving forum
On Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, puts a lot of information out there. During COVID, he did a bunch of videos on the Facebook Facebook club.
And then also doing some shading,
mixing some
lighting.
Yeah.
What's it called?
It's just Decoy carving form.
Yeah, it's hard to get into sometimes. So one of the questions that I've always kind of had was just kind of detail and like the way that you decide like how much detail that you want to have. So like, do you need primaries? Do you want to have primaries, or just kind of skip that and have just kind of flat backs?
I'm gonna put some.
Yeah, you got some examples. Yeah, so that one doesn't really have any kind of primary carving in it.
Nope.
But you still kind of get that effect.
Different.
Not the same.
Different style. What?
Divers have shorter between primaries.
Yeah.
They're a bit on the water and see their more or less. And then you don't notice their primaries like
With the puddle ducks.
Sometimes what they'll do is instead of having them across the back, they just kind of let the
Lay on the
wing,
sides.
Yeah.
let the wing come down forward more in the side pocket.
So then generally, so then you,
aircraft, they're so small.
Yeah, it's
You
really
don't see them where it's like a widget, for example.
they'll stick out.
Hey Phil, where'd you buy those at?
I didn't.
You sure? Cabela's, okay.
So then,
pictures. I used to take pictures. I had a book full of sides, so the species was that
Well, it's a casting.
Yeah. But it's got a lot of really cool.
I was thinking, I have a couple cats, and I thought about bringing them in. I thought,
They only have 1 minute.
So kind of photos and observing.
A lot of it's just sitting and watching, during hunt season, let them come into the decoys before you shoot. So
Yeah.
just let them swim around. Or another thing to do is go out and spray and throw a few decoys out.
That's pretty good.
Just make sure you don't have your gun in the boat.
Or decoys.
Right, but
In the springtime, the foliage is different color than fall.
Well, vibrant.
yeah, I mean, you look
They're
at
more
the
colorful.
pretty
yeah,
blooms, I mean,
the
they-
males are way more colorful in the fall.
But as far as the way that.
But with primaries or whatnot, what you're saying,
Pass that around. You can pass that around. A lot of really cool detail on those primaries. That's a mold there.
So the more functional your decoy is the more it's going to be used. Probably the less detail you have in your primaries. I mean, you can paint it in, but you can't really put much in there because you're going to break it off if you do. I mean, now these are the same way. If you undercut those and made it look better, you'd break them off. So everything is, you make everything according to what what you're going to do with it. I mean, if you're going to do a real decorative bird, then you can get a lot. I mean, I've made them so I've had a wing out, and if you're going to spend an extra 80 hours and put a stick of wing out there and do decorative, you can get wings. I used to have a bunch in the freezer. My wife has now told me I don't need to do that anymore. But like you, I would cut the wings, and I wouldn't, I had a wrapped in tin foil in the freezer, and tonight I was debating. I've got turkey wings right now, and I was going to bring in a couple of turkey wings, and I thought, well, we're doing ducks, we don't need turkeys. But it's very similar. I mean, as far as you can bend it, and you can see only the examples are, 18 inches long. But it's kind of fun. I mean, you kind of have to decide what you're going to make and how well, it's like how far you're going to stick a bill out, because if you're hunting, you just grab the bill and throw the bird in the boat. You don't worry about it too much. And, you just break them off if you don't build them beefy enough. So, but yeah, primary is the same way, and I don't think that, if you're like, it's a functional bird, you don't have to worry too much, because I've had real fancy ones sitting out there, and I've had some that, I don't know, I can't think of his name. He always brings in a lot of birds. He and his daughter carve, and they're real functional decoys. And yeah, you can, you can throw. We used to put milk bottles out, and for decoys, and you'd paint them a little bit of white and black, and tie a string through the handle, and milk carton, and just milk bottles, and just throw them out, and you would be amazed how many birds would come and take a second, or would swing by and look at that, and then you had the better decoys on the inside. So.
Back in the 70s, we were hunting the San Luis Valley, and it was windy, and it flooded pretty good. And we were hunting, and we just had a morning hunt. My buddy was taking a nap, and we'd been jump shooting in the canal, and went out, and there were mallards and pintails that were flying over where we were, and they were just outside of range. And there was this farmer that let us hunt. I went over in his pasture and picked up some dry cow chips, threw them out in the grass, and of course, the flooded grass in the pasture. It brought them down about 10 yards. to where you can shoot. And so there's your example of what you can decoy a bird with. But you know, like these gunners here, I mean, those are gunners, and that's as much detail as I put in a primary, in 70 birds.
Yeah.
You don't feel bad with tricking a duck with cow shit?
No, it didn't bother me. I mean,
No, you know,
they didn't taste like shit either. But I mean, that's just the two extremes. You can, you know, but I mean, you're talking about jug hunting, you know, we did the same thing, you know, as kids. We didn't have a lot of money for decoys. Best we could do was a carry light, and that was a high priced bird. We went about $5 a piece, you know.
yeah, no, you know, it's the people that have the, you know, want to look at the primaries and want them crossed.
Right.
They don't, you know, they think every bird lands and crosses their wings. You know, and like I say, the divers a lot of times aren't. And then when you get into the teal and stuff like that, who knows what the hell they're gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, because they're just goofy birds. I mean, they're just kind of the clowns. I mean, they'll land and they'll do all kinds of stuff.
But like you say, that's as fancy as I got, but on the divers, I didn't put any primaries in.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a quick brush and paint them in.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
And that's what most of us, you know, that's, when they were functional, that's what probably what most of us did. We just painted them in and just rounded the back down because, well, you know.
You didn't need to put the time into carving them in.
No, you didn't have to, you know. I mean, it was, you know, you paint the head green and put a little orange on the bill and use a lot of gray and white, and it worked for a lot of things, you know. And bluebill's very similar, a lot of white and, you know, a darker front, and they would decoy to them.
What about for competitions? What are they looking for kind of primaries and detail in the competitions?
Tom can answer that one. I mean,
Basically, it's just based on one for the bird that you're trying to know, because, you know,
So it's what?
go ahead, Tom.
Oh, yeah, right, if you're doing a relaxed bird up front, you want to relax back end. Not saying you can't have your primaries crossed and relaxed bird, but it's all about the angles and such with your primaries and how they come in, kind of what Bruce was talking about. If you look at this wood duck here, that's a casting of a net duck decoy. He's one of the best out there. And you see all his primaries are coming into the body with the wings, with the secondaries and everything else. It's all about the angles, and Tom was saying with the wings, he studies the angles.
yeah, this is the one he's talking about.
Yeah.
And this is more on the, I guess,
Decorative.
this is decorative side.
Yeah.
I mean, they even have the hiney in here.
Yeah.
You know, I carved very few of those.
Right. And you could do, you know, if you want to do a smoothie where you could have those primaries supported, you could still carve the outside or the top, and that's those same angles. It's all about angles, and that is a big thing that judges are looking for.
Is the angles and like
The angles and how they
more
kind of come up
artistic.
around and roll. You know, it's coming.
Well, and all the competitions are different. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're in a decorative style,
Yeah.
they don't float. I mean, years and years and years ago, they did float the decorative ones, but you didn't have to start upside down.
No.
And you didn't necessarily have to, well, you'd weight it to balance it, but the decoratives floated in a tank, and the competitions I was in, well, you know, you just wanted to be the last one in. They kept taking them out, and if you were the last one in, you had first place. So they'd throw all the hens in there at one time, and then the judges would walk around and they'd take out this one, take out that one, and then eventually there was only one left in the tank, and that's the one that won. But you didn't have to start out with a keel, and you didn't have to write yourself, and you could be as decorative as you wanted. I mean, you could have individual wing feathers out there if you wanted. So, and those were the ones that kind of won, because, you know, even though it was quote unquote a floating decoy, but, you know, they were very, very decorative. It was very competitive that way. So, and then people got frustrated. The guys who carved real life, more functional decoys were saying, well, that's not a fair competition. So then it slowly but surely rotated to some other competitions. There's still decorative competitions out there, but I don't even think they float anymore. I haven't done it for so long, I don't know. Do they still float them?
Like that decoy, yeah, they would. Yeah.
They would float
Yeah,
this.
for
There's
the,
no keel, but,
for the words, right?
yeah.
Yeah, Ward still does a floating decorative type thing?
Yeah.
Okay,
Unless it's a full body with, legs and habitat, float those, but if it's a flat bottom decoy, they float them all.
okay. See, and that's, the last time I was there, mine sprung a leak. And I have a picture of it when they put it back up. It actually won. When they put it back up on the stand, it had a puddle underneath it. It peed. Because somewhere in there while it was floating, I have no idea where. I mean, I had told you I had so many coats of varnish on there. I don't see how the hell it could. I was convinced I made it too thin in a couple places and it leaked that way because it was like, there's no way that thing could leak. But it did.
On my first rig mallards, I had two different types of cork. I had this cork, and then I had the more coarsely ground stuff that's got, it almost seemed like every once in a while you'd find a chip of wood in it, but it was all more coarsely ground, and it was about that big. And I thought I had sealed them up, put them out on the water, and one of my feeders, or dippers, I had the head forward so it looked like it was kind of skimming. It just slowly during the day, it just kind of got lower and lower, and what the heck, and pulled it out. When we got done at the end of the day, put it in the decoy bag, because I had slotted decoy bag, set it in a decoy bag, and that whole corner got wet as it was draining back out. And I tried sealing that stuff a couple of times. I put like 4 more coats of spar varnish on there, and I found a couple of spots where it was just a pinhole, and it would just keep soaking in and never sealed it. I probably should have just sanded it down and put some body putty or something on it.
So, but yeah, so when you start doing the competition stuff, it's, you have to read the regs and go into what you want to go into, and the tails are critical. They'll spend so much time looking at tails, the judges do. Everybody looks at the head, but I always thought you'd see them, and when I was watching them, they'd always turn the birds around and they'd always look from the backside, and they'd always look at the tails and see, how thick was your tail, and how far up did you put it, and those types of things. So when you're carving them and trying to figure out what you're going to do, you kind of have to decide whether it's going to be, is this a wall hanger or, something on top of the fireplace, or is this going to be used? Because if you're going to use them, if you're just going to bust off the tails if you don't, you got to just make it a tough bird.
If you make them too thin.
Yeah, you can't lay too much out there.
Yep.
Even these are, kind of, they're thick and they're not going to break off. And I carved them, and I even patterned them. But these are my birds, so it's one of these things where they're going to go in a box that I sit on, and my dozen birds will fit in there. And it's not like they're going to get thrown in the old gunny sack and thrown 3 feet high into the truck and drug around a little bit, and then pushed aside to make room for the boat, or throw the boat on top of them, or whatever you used to do. These are treated a little bit differently, but
How did you get your texture on there? I noticed kind of on.
Oh, it's all wood burning.
It's all wood burning. Okay.
It's all wood burning, and I use a Dremel too, but
Okay.
Majority of it is just wood burning and carving. I draw them out and try and make it as realistic as I can within reason, and then eventually I kind of get tired and go, well, who really cares? It's one of those things where you're kind of going, so what am I going to do with this? Am I going to sell this bird, or am I going to, and these three are literally going to be decoys. And like I told, I think it was Luke, I said, I think my next 4 are going to be teal. So I'm going to have 4 teal in my box, and I'm going to have 4 mallards in my box. I've got the male, I got the drake cut out already in the cork, and I don't have the mahogany bottom on them. And I don't know why I'm using mahogany, I have some. So I figured, yeah, it's good wood for water, you may as well use it, you know. And I don't hollow it out at all. I like cork decoys because they're heavy and they sit. So I don't bother hollowing them out. And then if you want to do detail, you kind of have to do basswood, tupelo, and you can use white cedar, but white cedar is actually really hard to do fine detail work with. I haven't had much luck with it. You guys do real fine work with white cedar?
I've never used it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard, I think, to get finer detail out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've, you know,
Tupelo or
Put
basswood.
that basswood and tupelo.
Closest I get right there with white cedar, I just carve this, and then paint them in.
Some good gunner decoys.
It'll tear on you and stuff when you start trying to get too fine, and then it just crushes too, and you throw it in the boat.
yeah, so it's, I mean, you know, and even these aren't, you know, they're not gonna hold up to it. The cork one probably will. Your concern there is you're gonna break the tail off, but I don't think I'll break that tail off. That one's, but again, it's just basswood. You know, it's just a piece of 1/2 inch basswood that I have cut out and stuck in there about
You have basswood stuck into the cork.
4 inches, yeah. No, this is stuck in there about to here. I carve it out with actually I had it stuck in and I used a router for quite a bit of it. And then I just, you know, glue in the piece of basswood. Because again, you're gonna pick it up like this, you know, with wet hands, and you're gonna throw it in the bag. So, you know, that's gotta be able to hold it, and the same with the bill. The bill's gotta be able to hold it. So, but when you get back here, yeah, no, everybody's got their own. And you're kind of, you know, you kind of have to just decide what do you want it to look like. I mean, you know, when Tom does competition birds, he spends a long time looking at the back of them. And he'll wake up in the middle of the night and he'll go, you know, I don't like that one. And he'll make another one. I mean, that's, you know, my guess is when you do 3 competition birds for a rig, you probably have a dozen that you make before you get your 3. Maybe not, but I don't know how you do it, but I mean, that would be my guess, because, you know, you look at it and go, I don't like that head. What?
Practice.
Yeah, no, you just, different looks, and you go, oh, I don't like that head. I don't like the way that looks. I've changed the one head for the male cork one. I don't know, I probably have 4 heads laying around. I still don't like it. And I keep putting a head on it, and I keep looking at it, going, I don't like that. So I make a different one. The last one I made was too thin. I didn't like that, so, you know. And then when you get bored, then you take all those heads and you paint them. And then you get a long board about this long, and you put 6 heads on it with the bills up and make it a coat rack. Well, I mean, either that or you're gonna have a drawer full of heads. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, you know, I've got heads laying around all over, and it's like, yeah, well, it's time to make another coat rack for the cabin. You know, and this one, you know, there's one at my friend's cabin that's all pintail heads. And for the longest time I couldn't get what it looks like. And of course, I think of the 6 on there, there's only one that has a bill left. All the bills have been broken off, and he's like, oh, we should fix all those bills. And I went, no. You know, put a screw in it.
Put some hardwood ones in there.
Yeah, put a screw in it and put a little body putty. You can do that. And he goes, no. And he says, you know, those, we kind of like those. And I'm like, you know. But that's what you do with that stuff. Otherwise, like I say, I've got drawers full of parts and pieces where it's kind of like, what am I going to do with that?
Phil, did you?
The flip side of detail and hunting decoys is when I was a kid, the first carved decoys when I was 14, I didn't have money for eyes, so I've got some of my old birds that are on the shelf that don't have eyes. And I've killed a lot of birds over those things.
Yeah.
Just tore the eyes out of them.
Yeah, just had some gag balls and some old. Then I went to putting tacks in.
Yeah.
Just, you had to ding the end of the tack so it would grip, so it wouldn't fall back out after a couple of years.
It's no different than what a lot of the old decoys were. A lot of them had the heads with no eyes.
Yeah,
So
I didn't have any eyes.
They were just painted.
My first eyes were some teal I finally sent off to herders, and you get those wire eyes. There was an eye on either end, and
send up to Wasika here and, you know.
Yep.
Phil, did you have a couple that you wanted to talk
Yeah, I
about?
brought some old decoys and some newer decoys. A lot of you guys might not know what a lot of them are. This, I'll make it quick here. This is a St. Clair flat Canadian decoy. And it's hollow. You see they put a little board on the bottom just to show butts. This was just to show butts.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have a ridge in the back like that, and that's just from their drawn. If they're drawn back, and they leave that ridge for keeping the weather off and whatnot. That is an old decoy, and it has a big name on it. Well, this is mine. I made this for the Minneapolis show. It is a St. Clair flat style that did take third at the show. This, you guys ever, Denny knows what a bobtail is. This is a bobtail, Michigan bobtail,
They just go down.
and we're talking about butts.
Yep. Yeah.
Just,
That's a great example.
they didn't do much to them.
It's kind of a different way to do it.
Yeah. And these are all Marv Meyer. This is an old one. You can look at the wing detail and the tails, and almost every 2 years, he kind of changed his tail styles. This is the newest one, and this is right behind it. This be the oldest one here, and then these. That's about as much wing detail as I've seen Marv do on any of them right there.
And that shoveler. It's interesting looking at the older canvas back to the newer canvas back, where you cross the primaries in the back.
Yep.
Has a little bit more detail in that rum.
No doubt about it. Will you guys pick them up, handle
You
them?
got some tail.
This is fairly new.
Tail detail now.
Yeah.
What's that?
You've always got tail detail
tail
now on
detail.
the rump.
Yeah.
And he's crossing his primaries and putting more detail in them.
This is the nicest head he's made in my book. I like style.
Oh,
This
it's
is a
really cool.
Roman nose canvasback.
Who was the carver?
That's Marv Meyer.
Marv Meyer.
Marv, maybe some of you guys don't know, is a old member of the club, and he used to do demonstrations to us yearly, basically. Yeah.
Very cool.
He lives in Wisconsin now, so we don't get a hold of him too often. But
There's an old barber's chair stand that he put his carving here on it.
Yep, he
used to carve it into.
he'd shape out a duck and put it on his stand, and he would have it shaped down to just about perfect within, what, 20 minutes?
Yeah, his chisels are sharper. than-
Yeah, yep.
Got
Really?
amazing sharpness.
He was unbelievably quick. He is on the internet. You can see him on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah,
Thanks
so
for
chisels, he
bringing
was a
it.
carver. He didn't grind nothing, he was sharp as a carver.
Yep, yeah, all hand tools. He'd shape them out with his bandsaw, and then it was all hand tools. Quick.
That's really cool.
Most of it's white cedar,
All white cedar.
all white cedar.
How old's the oldest and how old's the newest?
Well, I've got older ones, but this is 91.
Okay.
And there's no date on that, but I'm guessing these are in the 90s. And this is like 2007, 2008. And this was 2 years ago.
Cool.
Always changing the style.
Paints are about the same speed too.
What's that?
Paints are about the same speed too.
Yep.
Really quick with the painting too.
It's quick.
House paint.
Oh,
Bang,
really?
bang, bang.
Really?
Yeah, latex paint.
And I brought that for a detail butt, if that would.
On this one? Yeah.
That is plastic. I picked it up at a garage sale for probably $2, and it had all the parts on it, and what the heck?
That's great. That's really cool detail back there.
Yeah.
I don't know if the camera can catch that, but one of the things, so carving this one, going into this back part, I kind of struggled with like, what that actually should look like, technically. Like, I guess it can kind of come up all the way that you want it to, or if you do have that definition back there. If there's kind of opinions on that, or I guess probably strength comes into that. So if you do have, like this comes out a little bit over here where you can grab it, but then if you were to, I mean, you could probably keep that into that back, as those feathers are, when those feathers come out, if you're looking at the duck, are really thin there. But then kind of that trade-off between your detail and what that looks like and the strength.
Yep,
of
if it's
the
being
gunner.
used as an actual decoy, you can do anything you want. But, you know, that's why they did these bobtails.
Yeah,
Didn't need to break anything.
that's not gonna break.
Yep. You
The
know,
whole
that's
idea is
probably-
get them within shooting range.
Yeah, no, they're,
Captive.
yeah, and how much time you wanna spend on them. You can spend hours and hours and hours. I spent a lot of time with Grant Goltz, long time ago, when he was doing competitive work, and it was amazing. It always amazed me how much time and how intricate he could work. And I carved a bird alongside him, one my own, not the same species as he, but it was like, and he used to, and then he'd say, okay, so this one's getting thin enough, and I'd say, well, how do you know? Because he had the big hook calipers, and he'd say, oh, I use those, he said, but then eventually I want to be able to hold it up to the light, and if the light can shine through it, it's thin enough. He said, if the light doesn't shine through it, he said, it's not thin enough yet. And it's like, boy, I guess I never really thought that you could see light through wood, but you would see that with his, But then he would have a flying grouse and one wingtip was touching a leaf on a branch. And that's the only thing that held the bird up, was that leaf touching one wing of a ruffled grouse. And it was like, wow, yeah, no wonder you win those competitions, because he would solder those wings, or solder the branches out of copper, and then he would rig it so that that wing would sit in there and hold the whole bird up. And it was like, and the bird didn't hardly weigh anything. I mean, it weighed virtually hardly anything at all. But it didn't have to be waterproof. I'm sure he went through in some places when he was texturing, but it didn't make any difference because it's a decorative piece. Doesn't have to float. It's not going to be out in the weather. But it was fun, because then you'd see other people carve a lot differently, and it was really, I mean, I was real young. I was just starting out, and it was fun because he knew a lot of people that carved, and he would say, now this guy's, real different, and he doesn't believe that a decoy needs wings at all. And like you say, he'd have a round butt. Everything was round butt. Every bluebill he made had no wings at all. It just rounded right off, but he made bluebill decoys, and so it was all kind of interesting. So we're all, we all carve differently. Denny carves differently than I do, and I sat next to him at the game fair, and he's turning out a bird, and I'm putzing around, and I'm and he's like, yeah, I got to get one done a day, and I'm like, jeepers, one a day,
All the way painted one day?
I like to carve a bunch and then paint them.
And then paint a bunch.
But carving, I do 4 or 5 a day.
Wow.
Painting takes me forever.
Getting the detail.
But my birds are strictly gunners. There's not much detail, and I do raise the primaries a little bit on some, but they're going to go in the water, so I'm more concerned about strength than I am about detail. The tails, I make them a little thicker, and probably the neck's a little thicker, and the bills a little thicker and stronger. I don't
I don't carve any nostrils in because I've fixed hundreds of decoys, and there's the bill broken right through the nostrils. But decoys are, well, Steve was talking about hunting over, what was it, Steve?
Well, I call them cow turd fairy lights.
What?
Cow turd fairy lights. Cow chip. Just to get them to come down 10 yards.
Cow turd.
I remember shooting a limit of bluebills on the narrows up at Cormorant. We arrived and it was frozen, so we got the cow chips and threw them out on the ice and shot a limit of bluebills.
Cow turd fairy light.
Yep.
When you're thinking about, or when you're carving, what do you want your tails to look like on the water? Does it depend on the duck, or kind of how are you making that decision?
It isn't a conscious decision. I kind of have an idea of how I want it to look, but it's not, I don't put a lot of thought into measurement, and I've seen ducks with their head down and their tail down, and I've seen ducks in all sorts of different positions, and so I'm not convinced that on a gunning decoy it makes a lot of difference. I do the dabblers higher and the divers lower, but when I cut them out, I just cut out the top view, and then I sketch in the side view before I do any more cutting on it, and that's kind of whatever appeals to me.
However you're feeling that day.
Yep. No, I mean, I enjoyed game fair to no end because I sat next to Denny. I sat across from Tom, and then I can't remember who was the guy that had the flying wood ducks. Remember he had them hanging up?
Oh, I had that one, yeah.
Okay, that was you. And it was like, so he's super, he's super intricate, super decorative, and he's got every feather on that wing and is carved. And then I'm sitting next to Denny and I'm watching that, and then I'm watching Tom, gets out, does a lot of measuring, and he's cutting out a swan. And he's over there and he's got one done and he's working on another one, and I'm like, it's amazing how much he got done while we were there. It was fun to watch. But you're kind of going, wow, it's all these different carvers. And I was there putzing around with something. I don't even know what it was now. But we were, and we had a great time. I mean, but I enjoyed it as much as just watching how everybody else carved and how everybody else, some people made a functional decoy, and they were worried on like canvasback that the tail was just almost touching the water. They wanted it right down there on the touching the water. And it was like, that's the way canvasbacks look when they're in the water. They just basically round down to the water. It's not like a mallard or a wood duck where you see a lot of tail up in the air. But like I said, it was just fun watching the different carvers. I mean, if you guys, when we do that, you guys need to come and just kind of watch, because there's so much talent out here, and it's so much fun to watch everybody carve and how different they carve and what they carve. I don't even sell a bird anymore. I carve it for fun and for my own benefit, and Christmas presents. And I tell my wife, I said, well, I got 2 Christmas presents to carve this year. So I have 10 months or 11 months left to get 2 birds done for Christmas next year. Mm-hmm. My 2 brother-in-laws, and I'm told them I'm going to make them birds next year. And she's like, well, what are you going to make? I said, I haven't made that decision yet. That'll take another month probably, for me to figure out what I want to make. And, But it's, it's just a lot of fun. And then, like I say, you can get on the internet. I can get on the internet and start watching some of these guys carve. And I can sit there for 3 or 4 hours, and next thing I know, it's, I start looking at the end of the news. I got my laptop on my lap, and I'm sitting there. And the next thing I know, it's like 2 in the morning, and who's that crazy guy on Fox? That, he's yelling about everything. And I'm kind of going, what?
Greg Gutfeld?
Yeah, Gutfeld, and then the other guy. But anyway, it's kind of like, wow, the news has really gone downhill in the last 3 hours. But I can sit there and watch those guys carve, and they talk about what they're doing, and it's like, it's just way better than watching TV. But you can, it's fun to watch, and it's fun to see how everybody else does it, and it's, but I guess the big thing for all of us is enjoy yourself. Make your own birds and make what you want, but enjoy it, because, well, that's all there is to it.
Has anybody made a big mistake or kind of did something that they didn't like with kind of the back half? Kind of how they fixed it or how they learned from it?
Yeah, it became firewood.
You learned.
Yeah, burned a few.
The shop is wood.
Yeah, there's a lot of burning. We used
Or
to,
I might have had it for a while only because I was gonna see, how I was gonna fix it, but then you're looking at it all the time and it's like.
Kind of over it.
Yeah, this is the bad example, not get rid of it.
yeah, I don't need,
Learn and move on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Learn and do the next one.
Kind of keep
That's how you
carving.
learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
there's one carver he wouldn't sign him with his name, he'd put shit pelts on him. And I was like, who is that? He said, it's a shit pile. He said, but I always make it shit pelts. He goes, and I sell them for $10 at a garage sale. He said, I'm not putting my name on it. He said, terrible, and it was like, look at it. He said, the head's wrong, and so so he'd sell them, he'd sell them at somebody's garage sale for $10. And he goes, yeah, that's when you
Hey,
spend.
everybody.
Yep.
See you again, Steve.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself.
I think we can
Take
probably
care.
wrap it up here pretty quick too. It's almost 1:15, so. Any other questions or anything else to share or introduce? Do you have anything else, Rich?
No, I think we're, it's, we don't come up with the right answer.
Right.
If you're gonna go really decorative, then you can look at this and go, well, we got a lot of work to do,
Start working on that.
and you can see where the wings come all the way up to here on that, and same with the mallard, the wings come all the way up to the front, and you gotta you gotta put them in there. And there's all kinds of castings out there.
Who did you say this is a casting from?
Kent Duff.
Kent.
He's from Rochester.
Kent Dove?
Duff.
Duff,
Duff,
D-U-F-F.
Kent Duff.
He's a longtime club member as well.
Oh, really?
He made that?
Yeah,
Where you did?
it's a casting at Kent's.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure where I got it, but I thought it was a garage sale. Cheap.
Yeah.
People used to buy them and then paint them.
Yeah.
That was their big thing, is they painted it. I mean, they were sold to be for painting, and you could practice painting on it, and then if you didn't like it, you just wash it off with hot water and soap. And start over again.
Try it again.
Well, it had a lot of dust on it. I did have to wash it to bring it.
Yep.
Cool.
Your mallard is a real good example of, it's somewhere between decorative and
Gunning?
It's a very functional style, and it's really good to look at. I think a lot of guys would really love to hunt over that bird.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell it's Tom's design.
Yeah. Well, it was
Yeah.
the club pattern. I used the club pattern, but definitely like all of the detail and everything is all Tom Mattis. I need to send him a picture of it on Instagram and just kind of follow up with him that I had done that or followed his book for that. It was a good.
If you ask him to, he'll critique it for you.
But yeah, I would love that. It was a good, if you haven't read that book or looked at that book, I would definitely recommend it. I learned a ton from
I
it.
mean, he's an excellent teacher. I mean,
Yeah.
It's, you know, he set up the website because he wanted to take and, you know, get more people involved, carving decoys and be able to take, because, well, he spent time in the Navy. He was a subsailor, so, you know, grew up out in Connecticut, and then after he got out of the Navy, he moved out to Idaho because he likes the hunting and fishing out there.
Yeah.
But,
And he's out in Boise now?
yeah.
Okay, no, my son's out in Idaho Falls, so I actually am out there 2-3 times a year for a while, so it'd be one of those things that drive up and see him.
Spend some time with him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When he was, I
How do
happened
you-
to get a hold of him through the old carving forum that, before we had Facebook, and just got to talking about stuff, and he had said something about it, he wanted to teach classes, and so I found 5 other guys. You know, he usually keeps his class size down to around 6, and there were 5 guys that signed up, you know, that wanted to do it. And he came out, and at the time he was talking about building his own studio.
Yeah.
You know, it's about quarter to a third the size of this, and then, you know, but again, he would spend time, you know, that way. He kept the number down so he could actually spend time with each of us, and, you know, show us what, you know, where to improve here, and, you know, everything.
So it was you did 2 days, and it was like kind of took
Well,
you
we
through the
did
whole process.
Friday night, Friday afternoon, all day Saturday, and till just about noon, 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Okay.
And by that time I've got a couple of birds on the shelf that I can bring next time.
That'd be cool.
Or, yeah, actually March, right? So I'll miss that meeting because we're still going to be down in Florida. So it'll be April. I'll bring them, because we did cork birds the first year, we did canvasback the second year, and then the third year we did a Connecticut style mallard.
Cool. That's about all I had for the program. Did you guys enjoy this forum? It's kind of an experiment.
All good. First time we've ever talked about duck butts.
Duck butts.
Yeah.
A new idea.